Today we will take a journey through art and mastery of John Buscema, a man whose pencil brought legendary heroes to life and defined the very essence of comic book storytelling. He wasn't just a comic artist, he was a visual architect, sculpting worlds with bold lines, dynamic motion and raw emotion. His work on the Avengers, Silver Surfer, Thor and Conan the Barbarian cemented his status as one of the most influential illustrators in comic history. From mythic warriors to cosmic champions, his characters exuded power, grace and energy, each panel a masterpiece of movement and anatomy. His talent wasn't just in drawing heroes, but in crafting epic, cinematic narratives that leapt off the page and into the imaginations of readers around the world. So let's explore the magic behind Buscema's artistic genius, explore his most iconic works, and celebrate the legacy of a man who helped redefine the comic book medium. Born Giovanni Natales Buscema on December 11, 1927, in Brooklyn, New York, he grew up in a working-class Italian-American family. His passion for art emerged early, inspired by Hal Foster's Prince Valiant, Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon, and Bern Hogarth's Tarzan. He studied at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan and later took night classes at Pratt Institute and anatomy classes at the Brooklyn Museum, refining his skills in life drawing and commercial illustration. Buscema entered the comic industry in 1948, landing a job at Timely Comics under Stan Lee, who was then the editor-in-chief. At the time, Timely was publishing a variety of genres, including crime, romance, westerns, and jungle adventure. His first recorded work was a 7-page crime story in Crime Fighters No. 4. During his early years, Buscema worked alongside Sid Shores, Carl Burgos, Mike Sekowsky, and Gene Colan, refining his skills in figure drawing and composition. By the early 50s, John Buscema entered the US Army, but his service was short as he was discharged due to a peptic ulcer, so he continued to work as a freelancer for both Tim Lee, which at that time was called Atlas Comics, and also for other publishers such as Quality Comics, St. John Publications, and Ziff Davis. His work in that decade included Roy Rogers and Nature Boy, the latter being the first superhero drawn by Buscema, who was co-created by Jerry Siegel, one of the creators of Superman. As the comic industry declined in the 1950s, Buscema left comics to pursue advertising illustration, where he developed a more refined, realistic style. However, in 1966, Stan Lee convinced him to return to Timely, now called Marvel, marking the beginning of his most prolific era. He began drawing on Jack Kirby's sketches in Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., followed by 3 issues of Hulk in Tales to Astonish. He then became the regular artist for the Avengers, starting with issue 41, a series that became one of his most outstanding works. Buscema's artistic evolution was evident in his dynamic compositions, powerful anatomy, and expressive faces. His ability to depict movement and emotion made him one of Marvel's most sought-after artists. In addition to the Avengers, other notable works during the 1960s include The Silver Surfer in collaboration with Stan Lee, which is considered one of his most memorable works in his comic book history. He also stood out in the first issues of Namor, and he created several sketches for The Amazing Spider-Man, later finished by John Romita Sr. and Jim Mooney. The 70s brought Buscema, the Fantastic Four and Thor, but perhaps the most important thing that would happen in that decade for the New York artist was his encounter with Conan the Barbarian. Since he would end up drawing more than 100 issues of the different series of this mythical character, becoming one of his most prolific works, he was so committed to Conan that by the 80s he abandoned his work with superheroes to head the 3 Marvel series based on Robert E. Howard's character. The popularity of these stories was such that it prompted the release of the Conan the Barbarian movie in 1982. John Buscema drew and inked the 48-page comic book adaptation of the film. Then he left the Savage Sword of Conan in 1984 after making the argument for several issues. After drawing the movie adaptation of Conan the Destroyer in 1984 and the graphic novel Conan of the Isles in 1987, he left Conan the Barbarian, closing a 14-year stint with the character. By the end of the decade, he teamed up again with Stan Lee in the graphic novel Silver Surfer: Judgment Day, inking himself and drawing entirely with full-page panels. This work brought forth a cosmic philosophical tale that explored themes of power, morality, and redemption. John Buscema's depiction of cosmic entities like Galactus, Mephisto, and the Silver Surfer is grand and dramatic, emphasizing their godlike presence. Buscema's artistic style was characterized by figures exuded movement and power, making action sequences feel cinematic. By the end of the 80s, he drew Wolverine in the bi-weekly series Marvel Comics Presents. From numbers 1 to 10, he also drew the first regular Wolverine series. In the early years of the new decade of the 90s, he continued to be involved with Wolverine, drawing and inking the graphic novel Wolverine: Bloody Choices. In 1991, he would meet again with a character he knew very well. John Buscema returned to the Savage Sword of Conan in issue 191 and for 20 issues. That same year, the graphic novel Conan the Rogues appeared on the market, scripted, drawn, inked, and colored by himself over a period of 7 years during his spare time. As we have seen so far, John Buscema is known for his work with Marvel, but for the new millennium he had a small foray into DC Comics, initially working on drawing and inking Batman, Gotham Knights #7, and then he teamed up again with Stan Lee in 2001 on the special Just Imagine Stan Lee and John Buscema creating Superman. While working with Roy Thomas on Justice League Barbarians, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer and sadly died at the age of 74. Inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame in 2002, Buscema's legacy is one of artistic mastery and storytelling brilliance. His impact on comics is immeasurable, and his work remains a benchmark for aspiring artists. John Buscema was more than just a comic book artist, he was a visual storyteller, a master draftsman, and a cornerstone of Marvel's success. His ability to bring characters to life with power, grace, and emotion cemented his place among the greatest artists in comic history.